Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Well, this one officer who had been on kind of an arresting spree came up to me and said, okay, well, you need to identify yourself. I said, why? And he's like, well, you're breaking the gathering rule. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not in the gathering. I'm not with the protest. The protest was up the street just a little bit. And I said, right now, you're the only ones gathering around me. So please step away from me. Give me my 6 feet, please. You're the reason why I'm in,
Right.
might be in breach of this 5-person rule. Get away from me. And it's all on video. And then he's like, all right, we're going to arrest this man. And so in that moment, I was just fed up and I just fled.
Do you remember the Fight the Fine story of Jonathan Rossiter? He was the New Brunswick man who went to Quebec to protest the lockdown there, and he brought with him a small amplifier system to do so. And so the police came along and gave him a ticket designed to deal with traveling musical buskers to get Jonathan to just shut up about the pandemic and go away. As in the Quebec police, who are proving to be quite abusive during the pandemic, were then abusing portions of the law designed to deal with noise nuisances to shut down completely legal protesters critical of pandemic lockdown restrictions. Now, we are helping Jonathan fight that lockdown ticket in court through our largest civil liberties project, well, ever. It's called fightthefines.com, where we help people fight their lockdown tickets in court at no cost to them by connecting them with top criminal lawyers from all across the country. Well, friends, Jonathan is back because even though the police in Quebec tried to get him to shut up about the pandemic, he clearly hasn't, and he continues to protest, and he continues to get in trouble for protesting, this time a little closer to home. Now Jonathan received criminal charges in New Brunswick for attending a protest with some of our other Fight the Fines clients. Those clients are Nick DeAngelis and Brittany Green. Intrepid Rebel viewers will remember them because they were held in solitary confinement because they were arrested at a protest, and their bail conditions treat them like sex offenders. So we're going to get an update today from Jonathan about how he now has a criminal charge for protesting the lockdown in New Brunswick. And then we're going to talk to Josh Halpern. That's Jonathan's Fight the Fines lawyer, who has been working very hard on a criminal case now. And then I'm going to tell you how you at home can help us fight for freedom all across Canada. First, here's Jonathan with the latest update in his fight against these pandemic restrictions.
I was doing some apartment shopping and I noticed there was a protest happening here in New Brunswick where I live. The last time was in Montreal. So I'm an independent journalist, so I decided this would be a good opportunity to cover something. And I've been going around handing these documents to police officers, politicians, kind of covering the science of lockdowns and such. And so I went up to an officer. I started to interview him. This is all on video, by the way. The whole interaction's all on video, so you can show your audience. But I was speaking to the officer, just talking about the science of lockdowns, trying to help him understand why protesters are here. We're not anti-mask, we're pro-freedom, pro-science. And so he basically said, well, I'm going to issue you a ticket because of the mask, right? So I pulled out my phone and I showed him my medical exemption.
You're kind of going away from the conversation that we had that was based on science and that was based
on...
And
what I'm telling you is that the laws that they're enforcing right now are based on the fact that the hospitals are overwhelmed and there's an emergency.
No.
Those two things, yes, they are.
It's based on the fact that we're masked.
What's that?
Based on the fact that we're masked.
Wear a mask. First of all, I have a medical exemption. Second of all...
Okay. Okay, where is it? Can you have a proof?
It's in my car, but actually I have a digital version.
Please provide it right away. If not, you'll be issued a ticket for violating the emergency measure.
Well, actually, you can't. I'm going to do it just for your benefit, but actually, you can't do that.
Mr. Axel will be giving you a ticket. Please provide a piece of ID for me to do that.
Because there's no emergency, because 13 deaths in the province of 800.
Please provide a piece of ID so I can write you the ticket.
It's Nick DeAndres. I don't have ID on me. I don't carry ID on me.
Okay.
I've had millions of tickets. Fuck, I don't know. Like, I don't know how many tickets I've had of these.
Yeah.
It's Nick DeAndres. Here's my. Yeah.
There you go. More tyranny. More tyranny. I'll get out.
I don't know how you guys.
Brittany!
And keep in mind, around me, there was multiple arrests happening. Some of them are friends I've known for the last year. I met at other protests. And they were literally just coming up behind people, grabbing them, saying, "You're under arrest," without telling them why, despite having medical exemptions, are adding charges to the, not just a fine, but adding criminal charges, even like, for instance, like obstruction, resisting arrest for some people who didn't even resist, things like just anything they could. And so I showed the exemption, and then an officer, keep in mind, there's a rule here in New Brunswick at the time, because that particular region was in the red zone. There was a rule that no gatherings over 5, which is absolute insanity. I think they did that specifically just to target the protesting.
Right.
So at that moment, I had made sure I never gathered with more than 5 people, because I didn't want to get a ticket. Okay, and I wasn't technically a part of the protest. I was doing independent journalist work, just like a lot of the mainstream media was there. And they weren't targeted, but I think the reason I was targeted is because they only seemed to go after the maskless, right?
Right.
And so after I gave that exemption, this one officer who had been on kind of an arresting spree came up to me and said, "Okay, well, you need to identify yourself." I said, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, you're breaking the gathering rule." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not in the gathering. I'm not with the protest. The protest was up the street just a little bit." And I said, "Right now, you're the only ones gathering around me, so please step away from me. Give me my 6 feet, please. You're the reason why I'm in,
Right.
might be in breach of this 5-person rule. Get away from me." And it's all on video. And then he's like, "All right, we're going to arrest this man." And so in that moment, I was just fed up, and I just fled.
Here we're about the gathering, right?
You just arrested someone for not saying.
For failing to comply with the emergency measures.
What do you
the act
mean?
in itself. So there's
What do you
several
mean?
conditions.
How is he changing?
Okay. So, do you have a piece of ID on you, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay. Have you identified yourself as a police officer?
I'm not doing anything illegal. So
Okay. Are you going to identify yourself so we can issue you a ticket?
in order to make sure you get this on recording.
Yeah.
The only way I have to identify myself is if I'm committing a crime.
Okay. So we're advising you that you're committing an offense under the emergency
What
measures
offense?
order. So you're taking part in a gathering above 5 people?
Actually, you guys are the ones gathering with me right now.
So this whole
I'm not
No,
with
no,
them right
yeah.
now. I'm a person on the street.
I've been counting.
He's under arrest.
And he's seen me counting. There's never been more than 5 here.
There's more than 5 people. You're under arrest. All right.
Yeah.
So are you going to identify yourself?
Are you going to
sir?
identify yourself?
Yeah,
You're under
Chris
arrest.
Mackenzie Point.
You're breaking your own law right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get away from me. 6-foot rule. Get away from me.
We're going to arrest him.
No, we're not.
I tripped over a snowbank. It's all on video. And then I had 5 officers pummel me. And although he was telling me I was under arrest because of the breaking of the 5, I ended up with a fine for not wearing a mask. So he completely contradicted himself. So that's basically the story. And there was another person there was multiple people who were assaulted. And multiple arrests. I was held there for about 30 hours in jail, which is insanity. 3 others were held for 4 or 5 days simply because they weren't wearing a mask, which is just way overreaching. And there's another man who was there. This is all in the CBC article, by the way. They did a propaganda piece on us, and there's one man who's still there. He'll be there till the end of February. And before the protest even began, people told me the media were all set up, ready to go. That it was pretty much a setup from the very beginning. They were there to make arrests, and you can see that on the video. That was their goal. Everything they did was completely unlawful, and our goal is hopefully not just to get the charges dropped, but to file a lawsuit, hopefully, because getting the charges dropped doesn't accomplish enough with these officers. So that's the basic story.
I've spoken already to some of the people that were arrested that day, the people that were held for 4 days in solitary confinement. Like, if you are a child sex offender, you are basically catch and release. You don't end up in solitary confinement for 4 days. They catch you, they process you, they release you into the community awaiting trial. These folks were held for 4 days in solitary. That's insane. Now,
they're very good friends of mine, actually.
Yeah. Now, what did you finally end up with when they released you 30 hours later? What were your fines? What were your charges?
I was fined for not wearing a mask, which is absolutely insane. Because I said I presented the digital copy of my valid medical exemption, and the officer that I gave it to, he stood by and watched this other officer harass me directly after I showed it to him, and so I was charged with that, or fined for that. Then I was charged with obstruction, resisting arrest, and assault, which is hilarious because I didn't do any assaulting. They assaulted me. They had no legal right, even by the public health mandate standards. They had no right, because I wasn't breaking any public health mandates or laws. So it was insane. It was quite a show that day. It was horrible. It was a traumatic experience. I still have a hamstring pulled from that. It's been 3 weeks, and I still struggle to walk. So.
And what was the amount of your fine?
It wasn't much. I think it was a couple $100. I'd have to go look at it. I forget. It was a small fine.
I think the fine is the least of your worries anyway. I mean, and you're there doing journalism, just like the mainstream media who ultimately wrote the hit piece on you. And yet they're not hassled for gathering in groups of larger than 5. They're doing journalism just the way you are. And you ended up in cuffs and spending at least 30 hours in jail.
Yeah, it's insane. And I actually sent you a picture of those same officers. 6 of them were gathered. You can show that to your audience. It's 6 that directly, literally minutes after they were doing all those arrests for the gathering, breaking the gathering 5. They themselves were assembled, not social distancing, 6 of them. The utter hypocrisy is. It just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. This is not about safety. You can tell.
Yeah, it's weird how COVID breaks along political lines. It's weird. It's weird how that happens. Now, I'm going to make the same offer to you that we made to you before. You know the drill. We're going to crowdfund a lawyer for you through fightthefines.com. At no cost to you, we're going to put you in touch with a top criminal lawyer who can help you fight, well, your fines, but also these criminal charges in court in front of a real judge, and maybe have these cops explain themselves why they're arresting independent journalists and leaving the mainstream media alone. It's sort of what the cops do in Toronto. What do you think of that?
I think that's incredible. And once again, I thank you so much. I think you guys are doing God's work, and it's discouraging because I was given a release to follow, and basically I have to, in order for them to, I would still be in jail right now, and if I break this release order they gave me, I'm back in jail until trial. Essentially, right now I have a hearing on February 22nd. I'm not allowed to gather with more than 5 people. This is on the release order. I'm not allowed to even communicate in any way with 4 individuals that were at the protest, 3 of them being very close friends of mine. they have no legal right to tell me who I can and can't text. And they would literally throw me in jail if they found out I was even so much as calling or texting them, let alone meeting them in person. So it's just such a breach. They have no legal rights. But thank you very much for everything
I
you
don't.
guys do.
I don't think people who protest the lockdown should be treated as though they are sex offenders, because those are sort of the similar restrictions on people's communications that they give to sex offenders when they release them, that you can't contact this person and you can't contact that person. They're trying to keep political activists apart, and I think that should never be the case here in Canada. Jonathan, thank you so much for fighting for freedom. We're going to do everything we can to help you.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila. Thank you, Rebel News.
Crazy, right? We hear a lot about how heavy-handed the cops are in Quebec, but New Brunswick is equally as terrible. Between what these cops did to Nick DeAngelis and Brittany Green, throwing them in solitary confinement for protesting and then issuing them criminal charges, now they've done the same to Jonathan. These cops are out of control, but luckily we have a great lawyer named Josh Halpern who has been working to give these cops the reality check they need. Here's Josh Halpern on the latest in Josh's case.
Essentially, 5 police officers in full gear trampled him to the ground because he was trying to exercise his charter right to protest. I mean, even Paul Bernardo wasn't trampled to the ground by 5 police officers. And Jonathan was not hurting anyone. He wasn't carrying a weapon. He wasn't trying to fight back. This excessive force by these officers amounts to some very serious charter breaches. I mean, most notably is Section 7 right to life, liberty, and security. And you can also say that these officers violated his right to be presumed innocent under Section 11D. I mean, it seems like he was treated by a criminal by these 5 non-judges right away. And this really is not something I would expect to find in Canada. And the law is clear that if there is a violation of a charter right and it can't be justified, then there needs to be a remedy. And I can't think of anything justifying 5 officers essentially assaulting a man who's just trying to exercise his right to protest, who has 0 weapons on him. I mean, aside from a camera, which I guess in their eyes is the most serious weapon of all.
As promised, I said you would have an opportunity to help us. It is a protected Canadian charter right to be able to protest the government and the bad decisions you think the government is making. You should not be arrested and then criminally charged and thrown in the slammer for it, especially when the data doesn't seem to warrant the kind of hard response we're seeing from enforcement officials all across the country. We have got to fight these tickets and these criminal charges because we've got to put these cops and the health officials and the politicians making these decisions back in their place. And we have to use the courts to do it. If you'd like to help us, help Jonathan and the nearly 1,000 other people and businesses fighting for the civil liberties of other Canadians by fighting their lockdown tickets in court. Please donate today to offset their legal fees at fightthefines.com. And I've got some good news. Our Fight the Fines work is now supported by a registered Canadian charity called the Democracy Fund, which means that your donations to Fight the Fines now qualify for a charitable tax receipt. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. If you'd like to help us help Jonathan and the nearly 1,000 other people and businesses we are helping through fightthefines.com. You can donate at that website, fightthefines.com. And I've got great news because our Fight the Fines work is now supported by a registered Canadian charity called the Democracy Fund. So your donations now qualify for a charitable tax receipt. Again, that website is fightthefines.com.